After duelists realized GOAT format was overrated, fans were clamoring for something that would really get their game on, but like in a totally consensual way. Similar to my completely heterosexual love for Brendan Fraser, they really don't make movies like The Mummy anymore, do they? Reaper format is the format after the popular GOAT format, which reigned the first half of 2005. Its reign spanned from October 1st, 2005 all the way through February 18th, 2006. This truly signified the end of Duel Monsters era Yu-Gi-Oh! And ushered in the GX era in full.
I would love to pummel that little toothpick of a man.
You could say Konami really chazzed it up. By this point, before Reaper and after GOAT, the game received both the core set Cybernetic Revolution and the 2005 Collector's Tins. Both topics I have done history of entries about, wink wink, nudge nudge. But what you really need to know in abridged form is Cybernetic Revolution included Cyber Dragon, Cyber Twin Dragon, Cyber End Dragon, Drillroid, and Mad Lobster, or as I like to call it, the Killer Crab. Without repeating what I've already tackled in depth, Cyber Dragon introduced an easily special summonable monster with high attack. The two Cyber Fusions are highly offensive options with OTK potential, and Drillroid has a decent attack at 1600 that destroys defense position monsters, much stronger than previous monsters of its capabilities. What really kicked off the new format and era was what usually is the perpetrator, a new ban list, this time on October 1st. This was a big list hitting many key cards of the Golden Age. Newly banned, Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning, Sinister Serpent, Tribe Infecting Virus, Delinquent Duo, Graceful Charity, Pot of Greed, Mirror Force, and Ring of Destruction. Yeah, GOAT format's boss monster, Trinity, and staple traps were outright cut from competitive play. Crazy.
Who you call nuts? You're the psycho!
Limited, Magician of Faith, Night Assailant, Thousand Eyes Restrict, Tsukuyomi, Book of Moon, and Taio, Limiter Removal, Exchange of the Spirit, Nobleman of Crossout, Metamorphosis, and Scapegoat. Now unlimited, Chick the Yellow, Marauding Captain, and Vampire Lord. Plus, once forbidden and now limited, Confiscation and Dark Hole. Whoa. And also, Exchange wasn't even printed in the TCG yet, not until November anyway. I'm sure Upper Deck saw what was coming from what the OCG had to deal with and struck the card prematurely. Most of the list makes sense, hit all the cards that made GOAT deck so powerful, like Restrict and Scapegoat, and tear GOAT control apart. And now a duo ban, Confiscation was okay coming back, seeing that it was a weaker version of it. Their Trinity was completely gone, which in turn did downgrade first turn advantage, especially with Cyber Dragon being a solid go second card. Speaking of the Cyber Dragon, this is also why Ring and Limiter Removal got fittingly limited, to stop the OTK decks that use Cyberstein, Megamorph, and the Cyber Dragon fusions. Cyber Dragon also added Vampire Lord easily, which was why the Lord went from semi-limited to unlimited. With the gap now left by Mirror Force and Tribe, Dark Hole fit that spot well as balancing mass removal. So now the gloves were off moving into the late months of 2005. In the month of October, we would start seeing the Shonen Jump Championship Series, with the prize cards being Des Voltskull. This badass looking dragon has two effects: inflicting burn damage upon monster destruction, and it gains 200 attack points every time a normal spell or quick play is resolved. I wonder why Voltskull didn't get the boost from any spell card, but I digress. The series ran from August through April 2006, but we'll be covering events in Reaper format starting in October with SJC Atlanta. This event was won by John Jensen, who ushered in the new top-tier deck Warrior Toolbox, also known as Cookie Cutter Chaos. While Warrior Toolbox already existed as a deck, its strength cannot be denied, especially now with the previous top deck, GOAT Control, completely dead. There were still many powerful warrior cards like DD Warrior Lady, Mystic Swordsman level 2, Don Zalug, and Exiled Force. It's quite the saturated suite that is all searchable via reinforcements of the army. What also helped was that many duelists already had these cards to splash into a changing environment. Of course, we come to see Spirit Reaper here first and foremost. With Scapegoat limited and Duo gone, Reaper fit the bill in being a great defensive option that also doubled as hand control that former cards like Mirror Force, BLS, and Ring used to take care of. Now we see players adapting using cards more like Smashing Ground and Book of Moon, plus heavier trap usage like Sakuretsu Armor and Widespread Ruin. It should be noted that Reaper has always been ruled where the targeting effect must be resolved, so Moon would not destroy Reaper, just flip it face down. This was an issue until it was errata to mention resolution in Legendary Collection 3 in 2012. Alongside Reaper was Don Zalug, which was just another hand control option. Sounds like we're back in 2003, doesn't it? Since the versatility and annoyance of Reaper was so useful, it was no wonder why most decks ran him and why the format was named after him. The end of the month on the 28th would be a new structure deck, Warriors Triumph. Fittingly, featuring many warriors like Guilford the Legend, Exiled Force, DD Warrior Lady, and Mystic Level 2. The big new card here would be Divine Sword Phoenix Blade, which would see use in later years of Yu-Gi-Oh! One day later would be SJC Chicago on October 29th with a new winner and deck. Here we have Dale Bolito with his Tomato Control deck. This was known for using a card like Mystic Tomato to get out specific dark monsters like Reaper, Zalug, Sangan, and New Doria. It showed that variations still existed, and looking at Mobius the Frost Monarch in the main deck hinted at another upcoming top tier deck. Then in second was Carlos Santiago's interesting Gumbo deck. You can tell that this is a historic deck by looking at the Dark Necrofear and the one normal trap hole. The only fiends he ran aside from Necrofear was Sangan and Goblin Elite Attack Force, making summoning Necrofear impossible.
What the fuck were they thinking?
Keep in mind that it was a different age back then where duels played what they had, and thus why meta in many older formats look different than how we play them today. Going into November, there's actually some meat in this month. On the 5th through 6th, there was a sneak peek for the upcoming core set, with the participation card being none other than Exchange of the Spirit, the card that plagued the OCG to the point where it was prematurely put on the ban list. This card swaps both players' decks with their graves, and this was before it was errata where both players had 15 cards in their graveyard instead of just being you. If it sounds like OTK potential, well, that's because it was OTK potential. Thankfully, the proper steps were taken where the strategy didn't manifest itself in the TCG meta. Not too much longer on the 7th was Tournament Pack 7. Among the weird cards like Mr. Potato Head and
Fighting Polygon Team!
Fortress Whale was a highly sought after card for its anime roots. Warrior Elimination would be a good card for taking care of warriors, and speaking of, DD Warrior made his way into the halls of his kin after spending a long time in the OCG, even if he's not as good as the warriors we already had. Not even a week later on the 16th was the release of the next core set, Elemental Energy. Yeah, it took 3 GX sets until the main character got his archetype on the cover. Here's Elemental Hero, Shining Flare Wingman. This monster was hard to summon because one of its fusion materials was already a fusion monster. It's not like you can fuse monsters from the fusion deck, so this guy better be worth it. Well, he gains attack points per E-Hero in your grave, and he gets the effect of Flame Wingman, so in short, he is not worth it. Cool looking though, even if he does have an eclair on his arm. The set had a lot of cool looking cards in general, even if they didn't see any meta play whatsoever, like E-Hero Blade Edge, Yugi's Knights, and VWXYZ Dragon Catapult Cannon. Also here was Hydro Geddon, who would get their spotlight in the following format, so stay tuned. The Dark World archetype would also make their debut here, with the only real impact being gold, as a tech to counter hand control, given that it summons itself if discarded from the hand, possibly destroying opponent's cards in the process, and it has high attack to boot. Warlord Clan ain't nothing to fuck with. But the big card here from Elemental Energy has to be Pot of Avarice. I mean, who doesn't love pot? This jeweled pot with Hitler's mustache lets you select 5 monsters in your graveyard and 5 knuckle shuffle them back into the deck, drawing 2 cards afterwards. This is a great way to recycle cards to add some draw power, especially now while Greed and Charity are banned.
How many carats is this?
What, 4,000 or 5,000 carats? $3,000 a carat? I'm not.
The next event would be SJC Los Angeles. Elemental Energy would not be legal in this event, seeing how new it was. Famous Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist Paul Leviton would win with his Bazoo return deck. Running Bazoo for a low-star high attacker with plenty of DD monsters and return from a different dimension to overwhelm opponents made this a fearsome deck to pry its way into the meta. The last notable inclusion in 2005 Yu-Gi-Oh! Would be the next event, now with EEN legal, SJC San Francisco. Philly Luna would grab first place. The only new card seen in the main deck is what else but Pot of Avarice. More notably, however, would be Matt Lawrence's 4th place Monarch deck. While we highlighted Mobius earlier, this deck had a fully fleshed out Monarch engine complete with Thestalos, Zaborg, and yes, Mobius, good for its raw power. Thestalos continued the hand-controlled train while Zaborg could deal with Reaper, and now we enter 2006, separating us from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Of old. Gone were the days of draw and pass and enter aggressive play styles. Starting in the first month was the Shonen Jump Volume 4 Issue 1 promotional card. Yes, we finally got it!
The Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon!
Shining Dragon, a card released in 2004, could now officially be summoned in the TCG. Sadly, Ultimate would not be as great due to Cyber End Dragon being around. Sure, Ultimate had 500 more attack, but Megamorph still allowed OTK, and with limiter removal giving End another OTK option having piercing damage, the more useful dragon was clear. The 18th would see the first structure deck of the year, Spellcaster's Judgment, best known for introducing Dark Magician's daddy, or at least I think that, Dark Eradicator Warlock. The big new card here would be Magical Dimension, the card Yugi used to defeat Merrick in the manga, as well as being a decent way to special summon Dark Magician or other powerful spellcasters. This also contained nice reprints of still commonly used monsters like Breaker and Chaos Sorcerer. Likewise, this included a reprint of Magic Cylinder, so like I mentioned earlier, with playing what you had, if you didn't have Sakuretsu armor, the best way to get some decent traps or support otherwise were reprint sets like in this or booster packs, since it would be still a couple months before Saku got reprinted. Then 1 month later, on February 18th, would be the release of the final core set of Reaper format, Shadow of Infinity. This set introduces the Sacred Beasts. They're like Chinese knockoff Egyptian gods, or at least they're considered to be dark counterparts of them. The only one that saw any play in more casual decks was Haman and Cheeky Crystal Beast decks once upon a time. This is not to confuse them with the Wicked Gods. I remember thinking these guys were fucking awesome when they were first revealed. Think about it, they were playable gods. Although they were not Divine Beast typing, the idea of these was so sick. Aside from Cyber Dragon and Ancient Gear support, the set also got Demise, King of Armageddon, a ritual monster that, upon paying 2,000 life points, destroys all cards on the field except himself. Kind of like a kid-friendly ritual variant of Daedalus. The next notable card is Doomdozer, a solid special summonable insect monster with deck scraping capabilities. Of course, the single big card in SOI has to be Treeborn Frog. This is no jam, as Treeborn is like the next evolution of Sinister Serpent. While Serpent was great continuous discard fodder, Frogger here is great continuous tribute fodder. See, its effect is that if it's in the graveyard during your standby phase and you have no back row cards, Frog is revived on your field. This meant that if you're not playing a heavy back row deck, then you have a constant source for tribute fodder for anything, whether it's Jinzo, Air Knight Parshath, or any of the Monarchs. While this is the last set for Reaper format, stay in your seat. There's still a few more SJC events to capitalize on the new frontier. The first of which being the last event before SOI's legality, SJC Durham, in February 25th, where Christopher Flores, better known as Ivan, won with his Cookie Cutter Chaos deck, which is a deck in similar vein to Warriors. You can see the Monarch engine here, as both Monarchs and Dekoichi were popular with gold picking up steam. Then in SJC Orlando on March 18th, where SOI was finally legal, Michael Lux won with his full-on top-tier Monarch deck, incorporating Mobius and tribute fodder like Cyber Dragon, Reaper, Dekoichi Spy, and Treeborn Frog. Many historical Monarch decks for a while were Protect Dekoichi, but now with Frog's versatility, tributing just became a whole lot easier. Right before the next event on March 23rd was Starter Deck 2006. Yeah, we haven't had one of these in a while. This featured a decent range of cards from elemental heroes to dragons and a much needed reprint of Sakuretsu armor, also including an old OCG card, Skull Angel. Not much else to say about this deck. The last SJC we're covering is in Long Beach on March 25th. This was won by Steven Adair with CCC, but more interestingly was the 5th to 8th placing deck, which was a Sacred Crane control deck by Philip Fichu. The current series would continue on for one more event, bleeding to the next format, so again, stay tuned for that. And that's Historical Reaper format. Goats died and warriors and monarchs conquered the land. Reaper format Discord member Mageius mentioned that the term Playground Yugioh was equal parts joke and not a joke because sometimes the format was defined by what cards you could get your hands on or what events you could even get to. To quote him on the ever-evolving meta, quote, "It was constantly in flux," unquote. Now, when it comes to modern Reaper format like GOAT, duelists have seen the format in a more knowledgeable hindsight and availability. As fellow Yugi tuber MBT Yugioh so eloquently put the state of historical decks,
Their ass!
so with a modern mindset, it still looks like decks like Warrior Toolbox, Monarchs, Bazoo, and Cookie Cutter Chaos still have a place. Also, there are new fun decks being MBT Strike Ninja and Dead Rat, a variation on the zombie deck. Cards like Reaper still work exceptionally well, with Monarchs having their own variants, whether it's using Cyberstein or Treeborn Frog primarily. Thanks to MBT's Reaper format Discord, the format, despite the name of its primary card, is alive and well in a format that's oddly similar to 2003, just without, Bird.
I want my board.
Well, okay, nothing's impossible.